The last place I wanted to be was Frostnipistan.
This one's wife, laughing at the loser. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Seems rather unfair, doesn't it? Laughing at this one's wife, describing her as a loser. It's mean. Surely nobody would do that. Well, it would appear that they would. Many people operate with emotional empathy, whereby, even if they might find somebody's circumstances funny, they would recognise that the person would be hurt if they were laughed at, and therefore they do not laugh at them. With others, it doesn't even cross their mind to find their circumstances amusing. They are instantly and instinctively supportive of the individual circumstances. Nevertheless, there are still plenty of people that, despite having emotional empathy, would laugh at the circumstances of an individual where they would deem that they merit such ridicule. So, for instance, they wouldn't laugh at a disabled person as they fell out of their wheelchair in the street. Whilst that might cause some people to find it amusing as they are thrown onto the road, scattered, falling, many people would be alarmed and would rush to help, governed by their instinctive emotional empathy. But in certain instances, those with emotional empathy, be they empaths, normals, even narcissistic individuals, would deem that certain individuals are worthy of ridicule, that their emotional empathy for that person either isn't operating because they don't really know them, or, more usually, has become eroded as a consequence of that individual's behaviour. And that's where this one's wife finds herself. A combination of individuals who don't give two hoots about her to begin with, and thus, although they have emotional empathy, it doesn't extend to her, and then also a group who once upon a time might have been more sympathetic to her, but that has been eroded as a consequence of the way that she has behaved. And this has resulted in a situation as described by Andrew Court in the New York Post, whereby greedy this one's wife is being laughed out of Hollywood by A-listers. This one's wife might be one of the most famous, or perhaps arguably infamous women on the planet, but Hollywood power players are purportedly less than impressed with her showbiz prowess. The Duchess of Sussex, 42, is said to be scrambling after the launch of her forthcoming podcast with Lemonada Media was reportedly pushed back to next year. Honchos at the company put the project on pause for fear that the upcoming launch of her lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard Retirement Homes, would take attention away from her audio endeavours. This one's wife gets greedy, an inside source told the publication. Now, pausing there. Is she somebody that gets greedy? Absolutely she is. Having come from a position of not really having had a lot, coming from a position where she was unknown, coming from a position of not being the superstar that she believes that she ought to be, suddenly thrust into a situation whereby people wanted to know her, people wanted to report on her, that she's making money, she gets greedy. She has no emotional empathy there to keep that greed in check, that sense of entitlement. That she believes that she should be paid for doing nothing, that she should be paid because it's just her, that the very presence of this one's wife merits significant payment. Thus, with no sense of accountability, no boundary recognition, and that rampant sense of entitlement, it's clear that this one's wife would be greedy. The inside source continued by explaining she wants everything all at once, which of course is typical of the mindset of a narcissist, and it's backfiring on her again. She's become a total joke and is overplaying her hand. Lemonada execs are also allegedly worried that this one's wife's upcoming Netflix cooking show will divert attention from the podcast. That clearly did not go down well with Lemonada, the source stated. They surely expected to be this one's wife's priority project, but she must have decided she had bigger fish to fry with Netflix. Well, naturally. This one's wife does what benefits her. She doesn't take into account the needs of other individuals because they are irrelevant to her. The source says this one's wife now desperately needs a hit with her Netflix show or her lifestyle brand in order to prove that she and husband Prince Harry are still viable in Hollywood. However, the insider isn't holding out any hope. Almost everything they've tried has ended in disaster. Meanwhile, one well-placed source in Tinseltown explained that the A-listers have little respect for the Duchess, who commands big bucks for her content. Hollywood is glam and glitz on the outside, but the real stars have worked hard for their success, and you get the impression hard work isn't really this one's wife's thing, the source says. Now, after all her failures, those A-listers and the royals are laughing at her. It's certainly the case that this one's wife doesn't like hard work. Driven by her narcissism, rather than striving to achieve, which some narcissists do, her narcissism simply tells her, "You're this one's wife. Everything should come to you," and thus that is her default position. But because what she has always tried has resulted in failure as a consequence of having no charisma, having no talent, having no ability, and being unlikable, the A-listers are laughing at her. They're doing so because they have no emotional empathy for her, or it's been eroded as a consequence of seeing the way that she has behaved. That they say, "I've had to slog away to get to the position that I did. Countless rejections, taking on shitty parts, waitressing, doing other things to make ends meet. And then eventually, as a consequence of my perseverance and the fact that I have talent, I got that break and now I made it. But I had to slog for it. It wasn't handed to me on a plate." And of course, such people resent individuals like this one's wife. Remember, all people have the narcissistic trait of resentment in varying degrees. And when they see a Janie-come-lately like her, who is only known because of the man that she married, who is only known because she was involved for a brief period of time with the royal family, somebody who hasn't got any talent, somebody who has got no charisma, they think to themselves, why on earth should she reap the rewards of fame, connections, networks, and money when she hasn't put the effort in and she hasn't got any raw talent? Thus, when she fails, it becomes all the more amusing to those who've actually put the graft in rather than the grift. Let's take a quick dive below the line to see if there's any sympathy for this one's wife in this regard. Mac Boom offers the following observations. So many times in life, we find ourselves having to change course. She could be a nail artist. I think she'd be a great nail artist. She might even be a beautician. She would have to go to night school to get her certification and learn about what beauty really means, about damaged roots and all that. I think she could do it, though. Naturally, of course, the fact is that this is sarcasm in its highest, demonstrating how somebody who had the world at her feet and was a member of the royal family is now being ridiculed by suggesting that she could be a nail technician or a beautician. Not that there's anything wrong with such occupations, but for someone as this one's wife, it would be certainly seen as a particular climb down. Mimi Steinacker responds by saying, "Sorry, but any kind of service work with the public would be dead from the start. Can you just imagine someone telling her how they wanted their hair or nails done? The explosion would be heard across the entire block," which demonstrates that people very much do have the measure of her. BLT states, "I wish Harry would have fallen in love with someone who would have been more compatible with the royal family. This one's wife was not, and is not, a good fit. Once she got her hooks in him, it was too late. He's now basically estranged from his family, which is so sad." Dalimar states, "She's desperately trying to make a brand out of something they walked away from. She didn't spend enough time as a royal for that. to build a loyal base. Instead, she showed us her true nature right up front, offended everyone, including the firm that provided the credentials and authority for the brand she was trying to build. Too late now. They have burnt away any brand potential they ever had, which wasn't much to begin with, as they never cultivated it. They were relying on their titles alone. Ramona Sinhart. What a shame she can't be content with her life. She could have had it all, but made a mess of it. Night 3136. After all of their contracts run out, they'll see how little money they have left and come out saying they're returning to royal duties. But I hope King Charles doesn't let them. This dude, Suits was great, but she was my least favourite character. Rufus ain't right. Agreed. Her whisper acting is the very definition of cringe. Mrs. OG. They are beyond the point of no return. Toxic takes on new meaning with her. Have said it before, she leaves scorch earth everywhere she goes. She could have had a very pleasant life as a member of the royal family, sponsoring charities, Christmas Bowl Moral, travel around the globe. Harry is now estranged from the royal family with no hope of reconciliation. Sad and tragic beyond words. Miss Travis. To be successful, a person has to work hard. This one's wife does not, as the Spotify cancellation and reported 1 hour of work per week indicate. But before the hard work must come likability. Her claims against the royal family, her incandescent jealousy, mean envy, of Catherine, her revisionist history. How can a D-list actress unemployed at the time of her engagement give up everything? Make her someone no one trusts or wants to know. Too ironic. Hardly a shock, not even surprising. She doesn't expect to have to work and thinks she should be provided minions to do that, and then step in and put her face on their finished efforts, smile winsomely and take credit for it. People very much have got the measure of her, see her for the charlatan that she is, and there's simply no sympathy. The A-list laugh at her, and the masses, as can be seen below the line, have seen straight through her. Obscurity ultimately beckons. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.